Thank you so much for tuning in to the Pause Rewind Play podcast. This is your host, Casey, surrounded by fellow cast members. Josh, how's it going?
What's up, everybody? It's going great.
Another day in quarantine?
Another day here at house, at home, at house. Amazing. Starting this off right. Another day at house with my wife and dog. Just killing it here.
I guess we're not quarantined. We're doing the social distancing self-quarantine thing that the government's mandated, but none of us are like inflicted by the plague. So not yet, at least. So Vince, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Tomorrow they start the stay safe, stay at home in, I think, just Salt Lake, but it could be all down to Utah Valley too. I can't remember. So pretty soon they're going to start getting a little more strict about it, but it's not as strict as some cities are. That's last I read anyway. But who cares? I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about movies.
We're here to talk about movie villains who aren't always like the front of your thought process when you're like, who are the great movie villains? And everyone says Darth Vader. Everyone says Scar from The Lion King. Everyone says, these, I can't think of everyone, but all these bad guys. But here we are. Oh, the Joker, stuff like that. So here we are. We kind of thought, hey, let's have a little mini episode where we kind of dive in and each talk about a bad guy. So, Josh, do you want to start out with your bad guy who you brought to the table today?
Yes, I definitely do. So when we were originally talking about doing this, it was originally just going to be some of your favorite villains. And I was looking at it and I was like, and I was going to go with Hannibal Lecter. But then, because he's obviously very iconic, ruined fava beans for every single person for forever after that movie aired.
Did we ever like fava beans to start with, though?
If you ever did, you don't anymore. So there you go. And then we kind of change it to more of how did you describe it, Vince? Like more villains who say it, Vince, because you were
I was thinking iconic villains who don't get enough attention. Iconic villains who don't get the attention they deserve.
I think that's perfect. So, and as I was going through and I was kind of scrolling through, I was like looking through underrated villains and best villains that we don't talk about on Google. I was looking for a ton and I was balancing a few. I had no clue who to choose. And then I scrolled to one and it immediately came to me and I knew who it was. And it is, I'm not going to tell you guys yet. It is going to be a surprise. I'm going to give you guys a couple of quotes from this movie villain and see if you or the audience can guess along the way. I'm just going to do three. And if you guys know it at any time, just like yell it out. So here's the first one. It says, do you know what the scariest thing is? To not know your place in this world. To not know why you're here. The second one is, well, that sounds like the bad guys teaming up. Anything? Nope. All right, here's the third one. It's a little bit of a longer one, but then at the very end, we find out who it is. Now that we know who you are, I know who I am. I'm not a mistake. It all makes sense. In a comic, you know who you can tell who the arch villain's going to be?
Oh,
he's the exact opposite of the hero. You got it, Vince?
Is it Glass?
It is. We'll keep going. He's the exact opposite of the hero. And most times they're friends like you and me. I should have known way back when. You know why, David? Because of the kids. They call me Mr. Glass. Mr. Glass, Samuel Jackson in Unbreakable, and then in 2000's Unbreakable, and then again in the 2019 Glass, teaming up with Split and teaming up with David Dunn again with Bruce Willis. What an iconic role that I know that a lot of people have seen, but that's just, people don't talk about Samuel Jackson in Unbreakable being Mr. Glass. For me, I watch him, and that's such an iconic role, a supervillain who has the superpower of an amazing mind, but has the exact opposite of something like David Dunn, where he has extreme weakness. His bones will shatter on basically any impact of anything, but he has this mind, and he did we should probably put a spoiler thing on this episode, because if you didn't already know that, I just literally spoiled one of the best M. Night Shyamalan twists ever. So sorry about that. But so Mr. Glass in Unbreakable, he's teaming up with Bruce Willis, David Dunn the entire time, and they're going through. And then at the very end, in that ginormous twist, you find out that he is the one who's been causing so many of these bad things, just trying to vet out a superhero. In like a normal world, he's trying to find a superhero, and he's done all of these bad things to do that. And he's iconic. And then he returns in Glass, which, while a lot of people found it underwhelming, I found him especially such a powerful performance. Samuel Jackson does an amazing job in both of these movies as a character that is really misunderstood, but so like deeply rooted in evil, and that people definitely don't talk about when they talk about the best supervillains ever. And so for me, when I found it, it was an immediate yes for me. Mr. Glass is my most underrated, like should be talked about more supervillain.
I agree.
I haven't seen Glass yet.
Well, I didn't spoil anything in Glass, so I did spoil Unbreakable, so sorry about that.
It's okay. I think we did a past episode where we actually you went through the whole story, and I honestly don't remember it. I don't remember it.
You brought this up before, Vince, so it's happened. Vince, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next?
Go ahead.
All right, so this one was a hard one for me. I actually brought to the table 2, and then while we've been talking about this, I brought up a third in my mind, and I was like, dang it, which ones deserve the attention, right? Because, for instance, in the Dark Knight trilogy, in my opinion, Bane is the most underrated of all of those bad guys, because Scarecrow, super iconic, Arkham Asylum, right? Then you got the Joker, who just everyone loves, primarily because of the Joker being a madman, but also Heath Ledger's performance. And I was like, Bane is amazing. And I was like, that could be a good one. And then I thought to myself as well, I was like, oh, I can go ahead and I can choose Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards, who is, he's the bad guy, essentially. They call him the Jew hunter, right? Or whatever, the Jew murderer. He's just a terrible human all around. And he kind of like does such a good job. And Christoph Waltz, who plays him, is so good. And then I also was like, Michael Fassbender is a great villain in a series that people aren't exactly too thrilled about. Start out as, David in Prometheus, and then kind of that story kind of moves forward. You can all see Vince's face.
I liked Prometheus. I did not like the sequel.
The Alien Covenant.
I didn't like it. I tried to watch it 3 times, and every time I'm just like, this is not where I wanted them to go with this series.
But I love David. I think that Michael Fassbender does such an excellent job with that. So to be honest with you, in the end, I chose Bane. Just because I think that Bane, in my mind, is deserves a lot more credit. He brought down an entire city. Yes, he did it off the tailcoats of the Joker in the movies trilogy, essentially, but there's been a time where Batman really has kind of been not around. People have been able to brew and create better plans. And I just love Bane. I think that Bane is probably my favorite one because of the mask. Like, nobody cared who I was till I put on the mask, right? And then, he has like such iconic lines like, you adapted to the darkness. I was born in it. And all these different things that he just does. And then he's just like power, and he's just aggression, and he just beautifully done. Like, big mastermind, wonderful play. I know a lot of people, like I said, people know Bane. But as far as like in that trilogy and what he deserves more.
Tom Hardy was so great, and I'm not gonna lie, I almost probably either my runner-up or probably my third for this list was also from the Dark Knight trilogy. It was actually going to be Two-Face, and even though he is very short-lived and not even the biggest movie villain of said movie, obviously he's still excellent. Like, Two-Face, his descent into darkness, becoming exactly what the Joker had planned for him, was crazy. I almost went with him, but Bane is definitely a worthy choice.
I've been wanting to rewatch that for a few months now, so maybe now I have the motivation to do so. But yeah, I love that. Vince, what about you, my friend?
Great choices, you guys. I had the same problem as you, Casey. I could not decide which villain to go with. And I guess all of us had this problem, right? There's 2 villains that stand out to me out of everyone that no one ever gives the credit that they deserve. And the first one, call back to some of our old episodes. I haven't talked about it in a long time. The Skeksis, man. The Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. They're bomb. They don't deserve... they deserve more of a look, but we're going to move on from them. One of my all-time favorite villains.
I just want to say the Skeksis are great after watching the Netflix series and kind of understanding a little bit more of their intentions. It actually makes sense why you would choose them. So I might have smiled and kind of been like, huh, like it was more of like a surprise because I hadn't really thought about them. But as a group of villains, they did good.
Well, let's look at them. They come down from outer space, right? They get split into two separate species. They're basically their personality is split into two different people. One side you have all the bad, and the other side you have all the good. All the bad are in the Skeksis. They come down to this planet and they take over. They send the guardian of the planet out to like explore the universe. They trick her into leaving so they could become like basically gods to this planet, right?
Yeah.
And then what do? They make themselves gods. They make them gods themselves. They take this crystal that is like the life force of this planet and they corrupt it by stealing its essence to keep themselves alive, right?
Yeah.
So not only are they killing the planet itself, but they just are the most disgusting and gluttonous and conceited and just terrible species that you've ever seen. Like just watching them, they're just uncomfortable to watch. They're all drooly and gross, and they got these big moles and goiters on their face. They're just the embodiment of bad, right?
Gross.
Vince, you know what I'm thinking about right now, don't you? When you said they made themselves the gods.
What's that?
Community, of course.
Oh.
I'll be a living god.
I will be a living god.
All right, sorry. Anyways.
No, it's cool. So they show up, they take over this planet, they corrupt the core of the planet, so the planet starts dying. And when they finally and they make themselves gods by living forever. And then when they finally push this crystal to the point of it shattering, they have to find a way to like stay alive again, and so they start actually taking the life essence from the people of Thra. You know, they go to one step closer where they're not only killing the planet, but they're killing everyone who lives on the planet this time. And they do this all under the guise of kind of what I'm not getting political or anything here because this isn't exactly what I think, but like it's kind of the same thing in the series. They go through and they talk about the reason that how they justify it. They tell one of the Gelflings that we view ourselves as a higher intelligence. What is the difference between us using you as our food and sustaining us and you using like some lower creature below you? Like, for example, us for humans, like we eat cows and we eat pigs and we eat animals because we view them as not lower species, but they're there to serve us and they're there to feed us. They kind of view it as the same thing. They view these people of Thra as these less intelligent, less important way of staying alive, keeping the important people alive. And so they have this really like skewed view of the world and how important they are, this godlike complex, but they really are just like complete evil to the core. The Dark Crystal is a series that's hard for people to get into because it's a little ridiculous with the puppets and the fantasy elements and the 80s movie. We've been through this a lot. The 80s movie is hard to get through because it is very old and it's very goofy. But man, the stuff behind it is so cool and it's so fun to watch. And it's just like, I don't know, it's up there. It's up there with all the other fantasies for me.
I'm not gonna lie, I think that because Vince originally was the one who texted us to want to do this episode today, like, hey, let's do this short little episode. Vince the whole time was just like, I've been listening to the podcast recently and there hasn't been enough talk about the Dark Crystal and we gotta do something about that.
Listen, I was
way too many episodes
about watching the Dark Crystal series on Netflix, and I enjoyed myself. So I will take my hat off figuratively to Vince and say, if you want a good adventure and you expect it to be like amazing, goofy. I don't know, goofy, amazing, like it's just, you have to like take yourself out of what you expect and put yourself into a different mindset and you'll enjoy yourself. If you expect this to be big blockbuster, glorious, not childlike, get out of town. You know, that's really what it is.
We don't want you here.
It's a good time. So yeah, Vince, what's next on your list since we talked about the Dark Crystal? Okay,
and one of my all-time favorite villains that I don't think, other than me and my wife, I've heard anybody ever talk about is from the new Planet of the Apes series, done by
Koba?
Yes.
Yes,
I freaking love Koba. I am a huge fan of the Planet of the Apes series too. I've watched that. I used to watch the old '60s ones all growing up. We had the VHSs, and then this new series came out and just blew me out of the water of how what it could be. Like, I never guessed that it could be this serious like drama and character study, and it addresses world problems that Planet of the Apes ended up being. Koba is the most interesting character, and he has just this. We're attracted to villains who we can understand from a point, right? And Koba is kind of the embodiment of this. Koba is an ape who, before he was granted his intelligence, was experimented on through his entire life. Humans were poking and prodding and cutting and abusing him in all these different ways. Once Caesar showed up and granted intelligence to the apes and freed them, and society fell and humans almost became extinct, Koba rose to the ranks of second in command of what they believed was the last intelligent species on the planet. Koba became friends with Caesar, who ran the place, who everyone loved, who was just this great ape, this good guy who's just leading their colony or whatever, right? And then the humans show back up. And Caesar had the exact opposite experience of Koba. Caesar had a human friend who raised him from a child who he got along with really well, and through these bad situations, and they end up having to go apart. And Koba and Caesar had this, butting of heads of ideas, and Koba ends up in seeing these humans and saying they cannot be trusted, they're not good, we should just wipe them out while we can, otherwise they're going to abuse us and they're going to take advantage of us again. And Caesar's like, no, we can live with them. And Koba just can't do that, and he ends up turning on his friend, turning on Caesar, stealing power, framing the humans to make it seem like they're the ones who killed Caesar, and just taking over the colony. And Koba is just like, he goes from this like ape that you can understand, and this ape that you can kind of see why he's making these decisions and going down this path, and then he just takes off and he crosses the line. He ends up killing his own people so he can keep that power, and so he can protect his people, which he believes he can. And it's just such a cool story that I mean, I don't think it's really that original of a story, but in the context of like the Planet of the Apes, I just think it was really good. And Koba just stands out as one of my favorites. Just his character, the way he looks, what the decisions that he makes, and he's just kind of scary but understandable at the same time. He's really, really cool character.
Koba is such a good character, and you're right. Like, this Planet of the Apes series that they've made, it's just wonderful. And you get the first movie, right, has like James Franco in it, and you're like, oh, this is kind of gonna maybe be a little bit of a cheesy film, like there might be something. And then every time they've built another follow-up episode of film, I guess, sorry, like it just got better and it did so good. But Koba, like when you really think about it, Koba is like the scar of my childhood. Like, I just despise Koba so much. Every time after you kind of start to get it, it's like, Koba, like, and that's really how I felt about it. So good call out on Koba. Like, I hadn't thought about Koba as a character in some time now, and I'm like, oh man, that devious little bastard. That's how I felt about it. So,
yeah, man,
good one. I like that one.
And there's
for sure.
Yeah, and there's so many other like unsung. I wanted to say unsung heroes, but you can't. Unsung villains, right? That are out there that just don't get the recognition that they deserve. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up one of these days, even though we did way more than one.
I think this was kind of like fun. Like, I know that Josh, you brought one to the table, and Vince and I brought additional ones. But do you have any other ones that you could think of that you're like, this would actually be one I could chat about briefly, like thought-wise?
So I mentioned a little bit how Two-Face was definitely one of the ones on my list that I was thinking about, and because he was a really sort of short-lived as a villain, but sort of just his descent into what he became, and he became a pivotal role as that movie. And it's kind of interesting to say that because he's not by any means obviously the main villain of that movie. The main villain of that movie is, like Casey mentioned at the beginning, one of the most iconic villains that there ever is. And so Two-Face is definitely one of the big ones there. And if there was another one that I had to pick, like when I was thinking about it before, as far as unsung villains, I'd probably I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe my mind's just like too focused on like Batman right now, but I'm like a Scarecrow, like, and maybe that is I'm just like going really hardcore on Batman or like Ra's al Ghul or something. So I got nothing else. So
I
I
think there's a
definitely
good. I
Two-Face.
think that. Yeah, I think there's a reason though that you can't get those Batman villains out of your mind. Is because Batman's rogue gallery is so exceptionally good. Like, and they did exactly what I was talking about earlier. Every one of their villains has this like backstory that you can understand. You know, Mr. Freeze has his story about losing his wife and blaming the corporations, blaming these people that have money who will not help him or who messed up his, you know, his science stuff, whatever. You know, like everyone, Scarecrow, Two-Face, Bane, they all have these backstories. Clayface even has a really cool backstory that they just really make you care for these villains, even though they're doing the wrong thing.
We'll
Make you
actually go
understand.
with. I'll change my pick. My number one unsung villain will be Danny DeVito as Penguin, of course. Like that's what it's got to be. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, wow.
It's an interesting choice.
No, I was just joking.
Talk
But
about a descent right there.
I did actually remember one that I was kind of going to go for, and I definitely wanted Mr. Glass in the end was my easy number one. And this one, I was like, maybe he's not that unsung, but he's not like, you know, if you think about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously it's like Thanos and all this stuff like that. Killmonger, man. Michael B. Jordan. I don't know if there are many movies that can make you like feel emotion. Like I think I like teared up a little. Maybe I didn't really cry when he dies. Like it wasn't like that sort of moment, but just you cared and like what he said about like why he was there and what he was trying to do. Like it was very interesting to see like how much you like kind of empathized with him, with his position, even though you knew he was doing like the wrong things. He was also kind of doing it for some of the right reasons. And Michael B. Jordan did an amazing job in that role. And for me, probably one of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he is one of the big reasons that Black Panther got the award season press and all of the award season nominations that it did. Like I think without Killmonger and Michael B. Jordan, Black Panther would not be an Academy Award Best Picture nominated movie.
Totally agree. He easily made that movie for me. Killmonger is the best part of it. I mean, it looks beautiful, has great music, set design's awesome, but Killmonger's character is who we want more of, you know? Yeah. Like even above Black Panther himself, like T'Challa, like we all just kind of left like, can we have a Killmonger series?
like sorry, Chadwick Boseman, but like Michael B. Jordan was the best part of that movie.
It's true.
It's true. His character, just all around, like Killmonger is the best. Like hands down, T'Challa, get out of town, man. Like it was so good, so cool. Well, good one. Good one to bring up. Well, anything else you guys want to talk about before we kind of get out of here?
This has nothing to do with anything, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I watched This Is the End for the very first time last night, and it was hilarious.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, with James Franco and the crew?
James Franco, Seth Rogen, all of those guys, where they play themselves in like the apocalyptic end of the world. It was hilarious. Like stupid, you know, like those movies are, but hilarious. So we don't even have to include that. I just wanted to tell you guys because
we'll leave it in there, but I want to tell you what I watched. Speaking of bad guys, I watched the whole series of Tiger King yesterday in 2 sittings, and let me tell you, what a freaking trip. And I most definitely would recommend anyone to watch this. I was like, oh, it's going to be a long series on the last episode, but oh my gosh, I sat down and literally we had to drag ourselves away to take our dog for walks to break up the series because I literally slugged out on the couch, ate candy, and was like, oh my gosh. And this series will really make you kind of like spins the wheels, man. You're like, what the freak? So
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm going to watch it here pretty soon. I'm almost caught up on The Walking Dead, and I'm going to watch that next.
Oh, most definitely should. I will hands down recommend it to either of you. And if you're like, oh, I can't eat, I will put a plate out on the sidewalk for you, so you have time to eat whilst watching this crazy masterpiece that is the Tiger King. So
awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
Check it out.
thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us kind of go over our villains. In the end, Josh, who was your number one villain again?
Mr. Glass, Samuel Jackson.
Yes. And mine was Bane. And Vince, who did you decide was your ultimate bad guy? Because
I think it has to be.
Both of them were so good that you brought up.
I think it has to be Koba when it comes to right down to it. Koba's so much more interesting character-wise than the Skeksis as a group. You know, they're cool in their own little way, but Koba is easily my up there with probably top 5 villains of all time.
Wow, very good.
Love it. Thank you guys for wanting to do this, Vince, especially coming with the idea to do something that was kind of not something we normally do. But honestly, villains, guys, who are your favorite villains? Who are the unsung villains of the world, of the cinematic world? Who deserve that credit? You know, we brought up some good offerings to the table today, but there are countless more that you could bring up. So, Vince, once again, thank you for the good idea. Josh, thank you for really sharing the good insight that you have as well in every single one of these, and really just kind of like bring a depth of character to, you know, these villains like they have. And for those of you who are interested and kind of want to hear more about what we're doing, check us out anywhere podcasts can be heard. We have a website, prppodcast.com. Our YouTube channel, for some reason, 127 hours is blowing up, but we have like 50 other videos. So you should check out those videos as well. So you can just go to youtube.com and find us, Pause While I Play Podcast, and listen there. But also we have our regular social media channel. So we enjoy you. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for the support. And if any of you ever want to tune in and be a guest, just reach out to us and let us know if you have a movie you think we should watch or, you know, do. We're happy to have you kind of video conference in on us and talk about movies. So we'll catch you all next time on the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast.